I know this might sound crazy, but these characters used to be Smash's most disliked characters in the whole series. For a long time, people didn't really want these characters to exist in their current form and wanted their movesets to be fixed or figured out more. And these characters, over time, their perception began to change. Some people began to like them more, the more games they were a part of, which, tends to happen, I guess. Or the fact that they were decloned in future games and that fixed a lot of these characters. Either way, the goal of this video is to show the transition from how the clone characters started as some of the more hated Smash characters in the series, and then how they evolved into Echo Fighters today. Here's Luigi. He's literally Smash's first ever clone character, and in Smash 64 there's technically another pair that we'll go over shortly. As far as the origin of this archetype, the clone character, it began with Luigi, as he shares plenty of Mario's special moves, aerials, and smash attacks, only difference being a dash attack, which is him flailing his arms around, and a slightly different down tilt. Outside of that, the only major difference was mostly the stats of Luigi's moves, like his up special being a very strong KO tool, it's been like this even to this day, or the floatier jump height, which again is part of Luigi's archetype. And in a nutshell, he had less mobility than Mario and he was more floaty, leading to his combo game sometimes being less consistent. In future Smash games, Luigi will obviously evolve drastically in some areas from this version of the character. But this was the seed of the original version of Luigi being the very first clone character ever. Another lesser known example in Smash 64, and I bet you can't even guess this one. Technically, Jigglypuff is also a clone character, or at least a semi-clone of Kirby. They both have the same number of jumps, being 6, they have similar builds and animations. Obviously, some people might call this a stretch. They do share plenty of the same animations in this game and some of the same moves. In 64, reusing moves and animations is kind of part of the way the game is because it was developed under such a short period of time. I mean, all the characters pretty much reuse the same neutral air attack. This is why the sex kick is a thing. Does this mean they're all semi-clones? No, but it just shows that a lot of characters in this game share the same moves. You could even find similarities between Ness and Mario. They have the same get-up attacks, or Captain Falcon and Samus sort of have similar builds in their animations here and there, like their dash attack. But for those, they're rather small. Doesn't mean these characters are clones. Not every move is supposed to be completely unique, and it's understandable, but as far as the history of clone characters, I think it's important to note that the existence in Smash 64, people didn't actually find clone characters that noticeable or that big of a deal until mostly Melee, where the roster got much larger. It made sense for Luigi to be a clone of Mario. I mean, he's his brother. Clone archetype would get more complicated than Melee. 64 clones in Melee were actually separated and given more differences, especially Kirby and Jigglypuff, and even Mario and Luigi gaining more special moves that help differentiate the two. Mario and Luigi are mostly still considered semi-clones, but from this point forward, I won't be really comparing Kirby from Jigglypuff anymore, as they're definitely their own character from this point on. If you think about it, Luigi not being a prominent character in his own series yet, like Luigi's Mansion, it kind of makes sense that he still shares Mario's attacks. He doesn't need any of that Luigi's Mansion stuff yet. This stuff was just coming out. So updating his moveset further, although I think the side special is a very nice way to give them a major difference, they give Luigi even more small changes like a unique up tilt, forward smash, and jab 3, and forward air. Funnily enough, Sakurai actually tried to give a name to the clone fighter, although it doesn't really roll off the tongue like it would in the future, calling them model swap fighters. And because of Melee's high amounts of crunch during development, the game was made in only 2 years, and near the end, Sakurai said, you know what? In Sakurai's own words, they had time for either one brand new character, or it would have been as many model swap characters as possible. We obviously know what they chose. The solo character most likely would have been Wario, and it would have taken way too much time to develop, as a completely unique fighter takes more time than a clone fighter would. So they decided to increase the size of Melee's roster, and here we get to the point where Smash's more iconic clone characters. Mario is one of the 2 characters in Smash that have 2 clones of himself, and Dr. Mario is one of them. He's essentially a more powerful version of Mario with slightly more knockback on his attacks compared to Mario. However, Dr. Mario's recovery is definitely a step down, as Mario's recovery tools are better in the air. A majority of his animations are pretty much exactly the same, and they even use the same sound effects pretty much. The only differences being Dr. Mario's electric effects, like on his forward smash, and Dr. Mario obviously having the pill and Mario having his fireball. Falco is a clone of Fox, and Falco's changes make him a bit more different from his clone counterpart, having a one-shot laser that can stun opponents, that's a shine that sends upward and side beat at meteors, and a shortened up special. His strongest attacks are the inverse of Fox's, now being forward smash as his strongest smash attack compared to Fox's up smash, or down tilt being a KO tool, and down air being a spike compared to Fox's stronger up air. In a way, the characters are very similar from each other while also being opposites at the same time. Out of all the clone characters, Falco is literally the highest tiered competitive clone character in the game. His differences make him distinct enough from Fox to hold his own. For to this next character, there's more that meets the eye. Pichu looks like a joke character, especially in Melee. Jigglypuff in 64 was basically a joke style character. And you know what Pichu said? You know what? Hold my beer. I'm actually going to be even more of a terrible joke character. While Jigglypuff was surprisingly good, at least as time went on, Pichu never really found a meta success. In Melee at least. It wouldn't take until future Smash games, of course. Pichu has a lot less range than Pikachu, as Pichu is smaller and stubbier, and Pichu's power on most of their moves is worse than Pikachu's. Outside of a couple niche options here and there, like Nair being better than Pikachu's, Pichu's are mostly worse than in almost every single way, and on top of that, Pichu even damages themselves whenever the character deals electric damage, which in turn makes Pichu a pretty inconsistent low tier. Young Link is a smaller version of Link when it comes to his own advantages, like being harder to hit. Young Link is also harder to combo too because he's not as heavy as Link. However, Young Link has a lot less range, and more importantly, has less KO power, which sure does make Young Link an interesting character in certain matchups, but in Melee's modern day, Link is mostly preferred right now because he has more KO power. KO power is definitely very important in Melee. Young Link's projectile zoning works well with his smaller stature, but it really sucks that the character just can't get kills easily. Their main difference from Link being their fire arrows and the bomb is a multi-hit move. Down air has a fire meteor hitbox, and Young Link can wall jump. Rounded up special is a multi-hit attack, which is actually similar to another clone character that will come up later in Brawl. For Roy, technically the third time I'll be talking about Roy in these past couple weeks. Little ironic. We'll just call this the month of Roy. In a nutshell, Roy is a complete clone of Marth, having the obvious fire effects on his attacks, and the sweet spot of Roy's sword is at the hilt, while Marth is the tipper hitbox, sort of like Falco. In a way, they're sort of opposites of each other. Also, the complete opposite of Marth tier list wise. Being a fast faller also made his recovery worse. The lack of tipper hitbox means Roy has much less range, and a majority of Roy's moves are strongest when he gets in and scraps. However, some things work in his favor, like his down tilt that sends forward, which is the inverse of Marth's, and it allows Roy to set up combos. They share a lot of similar grab confirms, which is pretty neat. Ganondorf in Melee was a last-minute addition, who was only added because Captain Falcon's model was literally similar to a build of Ganondorf from the Zelda Space World build. And Ganondorf would be added to Smash through this method, as he was very highly requested at the time. Ganondorf is a slower Captain Falcon while trading his speed for more KO power, which does sort of work enough to make him a mid-tier character. And Ganon's moves in general are strong enough to even kill center stage, which is pretty decent, honestly. While aesthetically, Ganondorf's moveset has darkness effects, in a way, I think Ganondorf being added to Melee was fine. If Ganondorf was saved for Brawl, he probably would have had a completely different moveset, and while I do like parts of his moveset in Melee, even in future Smash games I like where it went. However, his moveset is essentially going to be a big part of the reason why Ganondorf is going to be a low tier in the future, and we sort of reach a middle ground of where people don't really know what to do with the character. Some people want him to be completely changed, some people just want to leave Ganondorf the same. Other people think he should go a completely different direction. It really depends on your opinion on him. I think it's interesting to know how making Ganondorf a clone definitely affected him in Smash. In the Smash community at the time, clone characters were not widely liked. A large portion of the community thought clone characters in Melee were lazy. A common misconception for the time was that a clone character was replacing another existing fighter. And this led to a lot of clone characters being disliked in the community for a long time, especially interpretations of Ganondorf more specifically, who many people think was robbed of a original moveset. While I'm sure looking back people understand why clones exist and why they were added, I think Sakurai did the right thing adding as many possible new faces to make the roster as big as it possibly could be. In fact, Melee was developed in 2 years of time, which is kind of crazy because not many games are made in 2 years, especially something as iconic as Melee. But the clone characters back in the day were usually seen as blemishes on what could have been in some people's eyes. You could actually see how this must have affected the team as they made clear attempts to de-clone a lot of these characters in Brawl, even straight up removing characters for the first time in the series. Even the clone characters that were added to Brawl are vastly different from their original clone counterpart. Some people don't even consider Lucas and Ness a semi-clone, while others might think they are clones. I actually won't be going over Lucas too deeply because I actually think they're different enough. You can tell that they were definitely pulling from each other's movesets. You know, they have obvious similarities. They have very similar attacks like forward smash, up special, up air, grab pummel, so on and so forth. While plenty of Smash's other clone fighters were made even more different, like Fox and Falco, where Falco more specifically was given plenty new moves and animations, having a different laser color, increasing Falco's airspeed, and making him fall slower, changing animations on many of his attacks, like forward smash, jab, up tilt, back air, up air, and obviously down special, and changing the move's utility big time. Ganondorf was actually given plenty of changes, making him a low tier, like for example a new side special that can actually grab through shields, and this essentially is a brand new attack, while changing his tilts, jabs, up throw, up smash, and the main difference to Ganondorf's KO power is much worse in Brawl. Not only is he still slow, but he's in fact much weaker than previously, and gee, I wonder how this is gonna make him tier list wise in the future, if only we knew. At this point going forward, Mario and Luigi would be vastly different from each other, especially compared to the 64 versions of these characters. Yeah, I guess Luigi has a more original moveset because Mario is also getting changed a little bit. Luigi can also now crawl, and a handful of Luigi's remaining moves shared by Mario have gotten their animations tweaked, like forward tilt, down smash, up air, and pummel. Dr. Mario, Young Link, and Roy were removed from Brawl, and you could say Roy was actually spiritually replaced by Ike, and Young Link definitely got replaced by Toon Link, and Dr. Mario was probably seen as a low priority character for being a clone. Toon Link has some similarities to Young Link, like being the obvious smaller and more nimble version of Link, sharing a lot of the same animations and moves like rounded up special, forward smash, and being able to wall jump, just like Young Link. However, he does have some unique attributes, like he doesn't have fire arrows, his down air is a stall and fall attack, his unique attacks are up smash, nair, forward air, back air, and back throw and forward throw. Wolf, another more debated clone character, some people think he's a semi-clone, others don't think he's a clone at all, but Fox and Wolf are actually kind of similar to each other in a similar way to Ness and Lucas. Some people think their differences are different enough. Wolf is a spacey like Fox and Falco. Most of his attacks are unique enough. It's kind of funny because it's inferred that Wolf was one of the last characters added to Brawl. The obvious similarities could be Wolf's forward throw, down special, side special, pummel, while having an up special and side special that are obviously inspired by Fox and Falco. In Smash 4, plenty of the clone characters would even get changes. Some would get some changes rolled back and maybe on accident, so stay tuned. Falco actually gets more differences from Fox, like a new back air and up air, and Ganondorf's changes were very minor. They actually made his nair more similar to Captain Falcon's nair in order to, I guess, make the move a usable tool, I guess, because it wasn't in Brawl. Captain Falcon's up air was made into a combo aerial. Link has a new dash attack, and they tweaked his up air animation. These two things make Toon Link slightly more unique. Even Luigi got some really small changes, like having a new down throw animation and jump animation. Lucas, when he was added back to Smash 4 as DLC, some really niche animations were changed for some reason and actually made similar to Ness's, like his idle animation, his items, clapping, the end frames of dash, but they made them more similar to each other. I don't really know why, but whatever. Also, I find it kind of interesting, yes, Ness has a lot of the same custom moves that Lucas had. They did this just because, hey, don't worry, we got Lucas at home, guys. You want Wolf in Smash 4? Don't worry, we got Wolf at home. When Roy was added back, they gave him plenty of changes from Marth. Many people call this version of Roy a semi-clone of Marth, as it's definitely leagues more unique than the melee version of the character, now holding his sword with a reverse grip and having more fire effects on his moves and more unique animations. Jab, F tilt, up tilt, dash attack, down air, forward smash, while now having a unique neutral special because Marth's is different now. Now I'm sure some of you are like, why haven't you discussed these characters yet? I've saved the best for last. These characters were the last straw for a lot of people. In Brawl, they spent a lot of the game's development decloning a lot of the existing clone characters. Well, they literally decided to add more in Smash 4. Dr. Mario's back. Hey, cool, right? So they decided to add clone characters in the game, like Lucina, Dark Pit. Dr. Mario now retains his down special and down air from Melee, and I guess because Mario is changed so much at this point, it gives a little bit more of a reason for Dr. Mario to exist. Plenty of Doc's attacks from Melee are back, like having a weaker recovery, like the electric forward smash. This version of Doc is heavily nerfed as the character is slower and the moves have higher amounts of lag. He also received a wall jump, which I guess is a recovery buff, but it's still pretty bad. It's not helping him too much. Dark Pit shares a multitude of Pit's moves, however, they're very slight angle changes on, for example, side special, which has an electric effect and hits on a different angle. Arrows have slightly less mobility, but they're stronger and faster. F-tilt has slightly less base knockback, and what's most likely a bug on Jab's final hit, there's supposed to be a small hitbox, but Dark Pit does not have this for some reason, as these changes are so minor. Even on Smash 4's tier list, these characters are literally considered the same. That's how much of a clone Dark Pit is. Lucina being the second Marth clone. In a nutshell, Lucina's attacks are exactly the same as Marth's, while having a sword that has no tip or hitbox, and its hitboxes are equally distributed on the sword, making Lucina a bit more consistent. She has very small minor change from Marth, like having an up tilt on the very later half of the move, doing slightly more damage and less knockback, but outside of that, they're nearly identical. I only mention that because it's so small, I just wanted to throw it out there. The truth about these characters is that Sakurai had to later confirm in interviews that these characters did not take up any existing spots. These characters were simply added because they had extra time. Originally, these characters were going to be actually costumes for the existing characters, Mario, Pit, and Marth. But at the last minute, they decided against this and say, hey, why don't we make these characters their own slot? The only leftover character from this alternate costume concept was actually Alf, who was originally planned to be brought forward from an alternate costume to being a clone character of Olimar. But hey, unfortunately, they decided against this. As Sakurai has stated in interviews, the main characters of Smash are considered the main courses, that the 3 clones that were added are the equivalent of the game's dessert. People were simply overreacting and thinking these characters were, I don't know, taking up their favorite character that they wanted or something. It would be nice if in a perfect world if they were more original, but they just aren't. Now in Smash Ultimate, they're actually going to drastically change some things. The whole name clone character was normally seen as a negative. Many people cited that they didn't even like the previous clone characters, especially Smash 4's, which is kind of hilarious. Sakurai did a 180 and rebranded the clone character again. He stated in interviews that almost making characters like Dr. Mario into alternate costumes over just being a full-fledged character would have felt like he was cheating the fans who missed the original Dr. Mario as a separate character all the way back in Melee. Which is why it's interesting that Sakurai decided to rebrand the clone characters to Echo Fighters. And we will go over whether or not it works or not. In a way, these characters were never really officially acknowledged to be clones. It was sort of a nickname given by the fans and the community. They actually have an official name now, so how did this affect things, you might be asking? Well, Smash Ultimate decided it was time to add even more clones. If I say clone or Echo Fighter from this point on, you know what I'm talking about. Daisy was added as an Echo Fighter of Peach, being almost completely the same as her clone counterpart. The only difference are the mostly slight animation changes, and there was actually one small difference that was, again, most likely an accident, where Daisy's turnips had a higher base knockback and lower knockback scaling. The change was quickly patched out in future updates, so yeah, that was probably an accident. Chrom was added as an echo of Roy. A little bit of cloneception here, if you ask me. Clone of a clone, whatever. Having a completely different up special that is actually spiritually similar to Ike's, and also a reference to Fire Emblem Awakening. I love Fire Emblem Awakening. Also being similar to Lucina's sword, having the consistent hitboxes across Chrom's sword. Also having a tweaked forward tilt, altered knockback on counter. But Chrom doesn't have the same grip as Roy on a handful of his animations. The main difference though is the up special difference. This is actually a big reason why Chrom is lower than Roy on the tier list, is Chrom's recovery is considered worse by most people. Dark Samus was made into a echo fighter of Samus, being again exactly the same as Samus aside from electrical effects on some attacks, and while having a handful of subtle animation changes. They are also exactly right next to each other on Smash Ultimate's tier list, so a little ironic there. Richter being a echo fighter of Simon. Obviously their main difference is their down special, where Simon has the fire effect and Richter has the aura effect. This only affects certain character matchups like Olimar, for example. I'm sure you're guessing a pattern here, as a lot of these echoes are exactly the same from each other. Ken being an echo of Ryu, and he actually does have a handful of differences. Ken having a different held far neutral attack, his forward tilt, forward smash, neutral air, up air, back throw, and having a handful of different animations and properties, like having a fire effect on a lot of his more well-known moves like Shoryuken. Ken also runs slightly faster and has a lot more of his iconic Street Fighter II animations. Despite Ken being an echo fighter, his differences are actually enough to technically mean he's a semi-clone of Ryu, so I guess there's that. In fact, even though some clones are technically called echo fighters now, they're still clone characters in Smash Ultimate. Isabelle is actually added to the game, and a lot of her moves are definitely inspired by villagers. If anything, this could mean that Isabelle is a semi-clone of Villager. Isabelle is the lighter character, yet faster version, and also lacking a wall jump while sharing the turnip aerial attacks, for example. And the moves even function pretty much exactly the same. Sakurai stated in an interview that the reason Isabelle wasn't made into an echo fighter is because Isabelle's different body proportions, and thus Isabelle should be her own character for that reason. There's some open loopholes here and there. Characters that were clones in the past are technically not echo fighters now. Since every single fighter returned in Smash Ultimate, that meant even clones from the past are back, like Young Link, spiritually very similar from the Melee version, but is still not an echo fighter, I guess. Pichu has returned as well, finally strapping away a lot of the low tier elements of the character and actually becoming a beast in Smash Ultimate's early competitive meta. As Pichu's still a clone of Pikachu, the character has a handful of new moves like forward tilts, up smash, nair. While Pichu still has the recoil mechanic, it was toned down in Smash Ultimate. This is the most original version of the character to this day. And still not technically an echo fighter though, but hey, whatever, I guess. Wolf is back. To be honest, the amount of changes Wolf got in Ultimate, even I wouldn't call him that much of a clone at this point, but hey, whatever, I guess. He was given a lot of differences from the Brawl version, so they changed a lot of Wolf's attacks to make him even more unique. Even having one of Fox's old nairs back in Melee, which I think is kind of cool. Even Luigi, I wouldn't consider him similar to Mario even at this point. Luigi now has a tether grab along with his new neutral air attack and running animation. However, they rolled back his up tilt change from Smash 4, making it more similar to Mario's again. But I mean, come on. Luigi has changed so much from Smash 64 to now. I don't even consider him that much of a semi-clone at this point. That's how big these differences are. Roy can turn around while doing neutral specials, something Marth can't do. And although they both have new forward throws, Lucas didn't receive any different changes, although Ness has a new up air, meaning Lucas's up air is more unique now. Toon Link's changes are only to his jab 3, his forward smash. Ganondorf finally has his sword smash attacks, but he's still a low tier. Many people say he's actually kind of spiritually taking Ike's up smash and Cloud's down smash. There is a heavy amount of changes that Ganondorf got this time around, as people would say this is definitely the most unique version of Ganondorf ever, although some people still think he's too similar to this day. it is what it is. Dr. Mario got a new back throw, down air was tweaked, and his animations were changed to give him more differences compared to Mario. He's still definitely a clone character though, although he's technically not an Echo Fighter though, which again, a little confusing, but whatever. Some clone characters are also exactly the same as the previous versions, like Dark Pit. They didn't receive any changes in Smash Ultimate, or I guess I should call these characters Echo Fighters now. As previously alluded, the clone characters that were introduced prior to Smash 4 are their own characters, while most of them that were included from Smash 4 onward are the Echo Fighters. I guess it's because technically a Melee veteran would be their own spot, but whatever. A majority of these new clone characters in Smash 4 and Smash Ultimate are referred to as Echo Fighters. How did this change how people viewed these characters? Well, in a way, Sakurai fixed the problem that a lot of people had. People went from actually hating on clone characters to wishing that more were added to Smash. It's kind of crazy how night and day things changed. Even I realized being an Echo Fighter gives a chance to characters to be in Smash who otherwise probably wouldn't have been added in any other way. It's like the rebranding actually caused people to rethink how these characters look in Smash. As Echo Fighter inclusions, even plenty of people make their own tier lists of Echo Fighters that they want for Smash. Even me, low-key, I really want Funky Kong. I can't believe I'm here saying this, but yeah, it would be cool if Funky Kong was in Smash as an Echo Fighter of DK. Even characters like Dr. Mario, Falco, Roy, if they were removed from Smash, people would actually be upset. These characters are pretty much integral to Smash's identity now. Roy easily would have been irrelevant if he never was added to Melee, and now he's such a mainstay character to the series. It's just, these things changed a lot of these characters' popularity. A lot of these characters probably would never have been added if they needed unique movesets, like for example, the clones of Fox. Why would you add a co-pilot to a relatively niche Star Fox series when you could just make a clone and then start from there? Or even Dr. Mario, you could say a big reason he was added to Smash 4 was because he was beloved in Melee. Echo Fighters was a way to rebrand a lot of how these characters are viewed and give them a little bit more of a positive slant. In a way, sharing animations and attributes here and there is actually normal in game development. A few I mentioned earlier, like Samus and Captain Falcon having similar dash attacks, or Zelda and Peach having almost identical idle animations in Melee. Data miners have found out that Ike's data was actually used as a base for a lot of characters like Cloud and Corrin. Melee, Game & Watch, and Inkling share a lot of the same stats with Mario. I didn't even bring up how a lot of these characters share final smashes with each other, because this video would just be way too long if I did that, but you guys already know. If you're creating a game, it's common to reuse assets and build off of them. It's just the way things are. In a way, clone characters and Echo Fighters now have earned their spot in Smash's meta. People kind of want them removed. I've heard people say for the next Smash game that people want them gone and they don't want them to come back, or if they do come back, they need completely different movesets. I'm down to just play it by ear. Definitely the perception of Echo Fighters has changed how people perceive these characters. I would say it's changed a lot of things for the better, but I'll leave it up to you guys. Thank you guys for watching this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. There's a Patreon down below if you guys want to get videos early. You will get access to the Honest Content Discord, stream my album, Zach Honest Sapphire. Hopefully you guys are having a good one. Take care. Peace.